What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're still considering an option for Najee Harris, and, well, Saquon Barkley has some words on it. Let's dive into that. Plus, a defensive tackle who may be on his way out, the next trade piece for the Pittsburgh Steelers, potentially. And then there's a slot cornerback who is still on the free agency market, who could be the final answer for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, a name that we should dive into that could bring some potential to Pittsburgh this offseason. It's a rainy one here in the Burgh. I am finally back home in the city of Pittsburgh. Thrilled about it. Could not tell you how much I missed cold weather and sweatshirts, not going to lie. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling, I think, better than you, who had to fly out of somewhere at 3 a.m, which I didn't even think that was possible. It was a good time. It was a good time. Well, that 6 o'clock land, especially in Pittsburgh, when you have to wait for the bags for like an hour afterwards, it was. Yeah. You want to talk about miserable people, man. You looked around that, and I was just sitting there. You guys know me. I'm miserable, but I'm also an optimistic guy, so I had a bit of a smile on my face. People were just whole time. Probably the saddest place on earth. I was gonna say, like, did your alarm go off while you were waiting for your bag?
Yes, actually it did. It actually 100, because I set it for 7 o'clock because I figured I'd land whatever, but I wrote stories overnight. Our new program isn't allowed to schedule stories yet, so I was like, all right, I'll wake up at 7 and I'll get these out, and then I'll get the next batch out at 9. And I got in the car, and my alarm went off, and I was like, sick. We're making it home. Went home, slept for about 2.5 hours, something like that, and then just felt like a complete zombie for 24 hours. It was wild, actually. I slept for 20 minutes. For those of you who don't know, because I wasn't trying to tweet about it, I was bitching about my flights on the way back or on the way down. I was trying not to bitch about them on the way home, even though I had the worst experience ever. And shout out Zach Smith. We've experienced this together. I got postponed until 2 a.m. They told me to hang out because they said that they're going to try to get a new plane there. The plane showed up at 3:45, so it was awesome. I slept on the floor of this airport for about 20 minutes, woke up, there's a little girl staring at me like this, 3 inches from me, and I was like, okay, that was enough. Her dad's looking at me laughing. I'm like, dude, please leave me alone. From there, I just hung out. Some girls doing yoga next to me the whole time. It was a trip, my friend. It was a trip, but we made it back, and I think for a couple days in the sun, it was definitely worth it. But I could not tell you how excited I am to be, in my space right now. It feels very good. It feels very good. Hope everybody had a good Easter, that celebrated Easter. And one last call to action here. For those of you who have been following along, go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk Clips. Today at 4 p.m., we will be doing a live stream over there to give away a signed Mean Joe Green jersey on top of a couple other shirts and giveaways from our shop to make sure that you guys know how much we appreciate you. Cannot thank you enough for getting that channel to 1,000 subscribers as fast as you did. It was awesome. All right, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Saquon Barkley had some news on Najee Harris. He was the last running back to get paid, signed a 3-year, $37 million deal, I believe, $33 million deal, somewhere in that ballpark. He said, I actually lost the story here. I'm bringing it back up. I clicked on the wrong story. He was on the New Heights podcast the other day. He said, quote, "That's our goal. You want to get that second contract. I feel like where I got, it's now Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris. You boys go beat me. I'm a competitor. I'm trying to go out this year, especially with the situation I'm in now. I'm trying to be the best running back. No question about it. But let's push each other. Let's all drive." It seems like Najee's going to be the next guy to hit the market that people are going to talk about whether or not he should get a deal. The Pittsburgh Steelers have kind of curved the question every time they've been asked about a fifth-year option. Are they going to pick it up? Omar Khan keeps saying they have until May 2nd. They're going to take until May 2nd. At this point, 3,000-yard seasons. You look at Najee, productive guy, dealt with a little bit of a knee injury last year, but was still available at all times. Do you think that they're going to pick up the fifth-year option? Do you get that vibe? And is he worth the fifth-year option for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I didn't know what Najee's fifth-year option number, like how much money they would have to pay him off the top of my head before I looked it up while I was like putting together my notes for today. It's less than $7 million. It's like in my head, it was north of 10. Like it was, something absurd that they wouldn't want to pick up at all. In my mind, it's 6.8 when you round up, technically $6.8 million. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I kind of don't get why the Steelers wouldn't be comfortable paying that money. I mean, this is a guy who has produced as just as much, if not more, than most of the elite running backs in the NFL. I get it. There are going to be people to pay down the road. There are contract situations you got to work out. Najee is one of, if not the most important people to this offense, especially the new offensive system that they're going to put in place and the way they're going to run the ball. I think he's worth this, probably a little bit more than that. But if that fifth-year option number is your number, I don't know why you wouldn't pick that up. That said, the fact that they're balking at it is really odd to me. It makes it seem like, to me, that they are not eager, they're not inclined to pick it up. And I don't really know what would change between now and May 2nd that would make the Steelers feel any different. It just feels like something that if you wanted to do it, you would have done it already.
Yeah. I kind of agree. Like when Omar kept curving it the first time in Indy, I was like, okay, it's early, but I didn't get a good vibe. Then I asked about it at the meetings, and he curved it again and said, hey, we're still trying to figure that out. Kind of feels like he should have already had that figured out. That's a very easy decision. Are we going to pick it up? Or are we not going to pick it up? I mean, $7 million, $6.8 million, not expensive. I think the problem is, and this is where this is where this all comes into place. Where is the running back market going to be for Najee in a year? Because in a year from now, is he going to be, the wear and tear, is it going to build up to the point where he's not going to be worth $10 million a season? Because the running back market, it took a step forward. Great for Saquon. I believe Josh Jacobs got a good deal as well. You look at these guys and you say the trend has switched, but is it going to switch forever? Or are these guys just big time names that get big time contracts? And is Najee kind of in the same boat? Like, I think Najee's worth $6.8 million. I don't think that that's a question. Like, that's an easy pickup for the Steelers. Doesn't take much cap space. You could fill that, without almost any effort. Where does it go with Jaylen Warren? Does Jaylen Warren factor into this? Because you're going to have to pay him at the end of the season too, when right now he's making less than $1 million a year. So, are you gonna pay him a couple $1 million as well? Then you got $12+ million under your books. Are you looking at it like we got to take care of Jaylen first before Najee, which I think could be a factor in this thing? I don't know. I kind of view it as the Steelers are trying to figure out all their questions about the running back position right now, and I think that worries them to the point where they're not comfortable taking it at this time, if that makes sense. I just think that they look at it and they say there's too many questions maybe to pick that up. I think if they don't pick it up, is he worth, next year, does he get a $10 million contract? Does somebody come out here and offer him and steal him away from the Steelers, or do you think they could get him for roughly the same money?
Well, I think someone would, to be quite honest. And I'm projecting out throughout this season, and I'm thinking Najee's going to have a pretty decent year. I think Jalen's going to have a pretty decent year. So I expect them both to kind of increase their value. And that's why I kind of think locking up Najee for this number right now is the more important thing. Like, next year's decisions are next year's decisions, quite honestly. And if you want to move on from Najee, I feel like if he has the type of year that I'm expecting him to have, that I think he should have, that I would really expect him to have, he's going to have trade value. So if you want to get rid of him, if you don't like, if you don't want to pay him, then you can ship him off next year with a pretty affordable price tag on him. And that's the same goes for Jalen. Like, you can see what Jalen does this year. You can kind of project out like, oh, does Jalen look like he can carry the load of a full-time starter? Are we going to get rid of Najee? Is Najee going to be here in 2025? Like, these are all decisions that you can make further down the line. But I think you afford yourself more time if you pick up this fifth-year option now. I think if you're the Steelers is we need to answer some more questions, well, no questions are going to get answered before the season starts, before even training camp starts. So
yeah,
I would at least buy yourself some more time by picking up this 5th year option, and I would worry about next year when the time comes, or at least later down the road. I don't think that's a problem that you need to worry about right now.
Yeah, I kind of see that. Like, you're not going to get him for less money if you do trade it. He will hold value, which I get that. And at that point, like a $6-7 million running back, you could ship him. You don't need anything. You're not going to look at it and say, oh, well, we need a 1st-round pick. We need a 2nd-round pick for Najee Harris. No, just, give me a 4th. That's totally fine. We're just looking to ditch the contract at that point and move on somewhere else. I think the NFL draft can make this very interesting. I think if you look at the NFL draft and the Steelers add a running back in the middle of this draft or even late, I mean, they brought in, who's the dude from Washington, Dylan Johnson.
Yeah.
That if they're looking at a running back and they decide, hey, like that's an option for us, and they add one and they, kind of like who they add, I could see them avoiding the situation. I just think you're taking a risk either way. Like, you're taking a risk that a guy like Najee Harris, who his body was a little bit beat up last season, we saw that, and you're saying, hey, he's going to be fine again with another workload, even though and a better offensive line, a better offensive system, and hopefully Jaylen Warren becomes it's more of a 50-50 split, and Jaylen Warren takes a lot of that pressure off of Najee Harris, where you could look at him and say, is he going to be worth $7 million a year from now because his body is going to take another year of beatings? I think that's a big question. But at the other side of that, like in an Arthur Smith offense where you don't have quarterbacks, especially after this season, are you willing to take a shot that you're like, okay, well, we did it. We built an offense for this year. It took a lot of work. We finally got it done. We just eliminated the 2 key pieces, our top running back and our quarterback, completely from the roster. I mean, you're leaving yourself out to dry at that point. So I agree. I think $6.8 million is doable. When it comes to if they're going to pick it up, I don't know. I don't get the vibe that they're going to. It kind of just, there's kind of a sense where it just feels like they'd be more optimistic about the situation. They've avoided 50-year contracts with guys that I thought they were going to pick up in the past, like Terrell Edmonds, was one of them. He was a guy that I was almost positive they were going to pick it up. Devin Bush, I didn't see getting picked up, but I thought maybe that's an option because they, could see him kind of taking a step forward, and they're hoping that he comes full circle. But they've avoided these in the past with players that were kind of like fringe guys, like right on the edge of worth it, not worth it. And I think Najee's worth it. I just think the running back position is a big giant question mark, but they will. I agree with you. They're going to lose him if they move on. And if I'm Najee Harris and you don't pick up my 5th-year option, I'm out too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also like, I don't know, like Najee's taken on this kind of workload for 3 years, and I get that all adds up, but like, man, he had one of his most explosive years last year, and that was while he was dealing with a knee injury, and that's while he, had, what was it, like 700 touches, in his career going into the 2 year, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
I forget what the number was, but like this guy's taken a big workload before and come out even stronger. I get that the likelihood of that continuing diminishes as he gets older, but to be honest, that's not really maybe it's naive, but I'm not really super concerned about that quite honestly, until I actually see Najee decline, because he's only gotten better over the course of his career. Like that's the thing.
That's true. You do look at it. You say he's built it up, and look at I'm a big Najee guy. I think Najee Harris is underrated for his value. I think you feel the same way. I think that Najee's a guy that people look at and try to say, oh, he's not that good, you should go with Jaylen Warren. But I think he fits very well for what the Steelers are trying to do, and he's reliable. I think Jaylen Warren and the hype around Jaylen Warren kind of makes that an iffy line. But I think he's worth it. I think if you could keep those two together for another year, at least another 2 years, you feel pretty good about it. And then from that moment, you know what I mean? Like, you extend Jaylen for 2 years, and then if you don't like Najee with that 5th-year option, cool, you're giving Jaylen the workload from there, and you're going to see if you could build from there because he's going to be cheap. I think that the options are there, and the Steelers have to, at least consider it. But I just don't think, unless you feel differently, I don't think that they're going to do it.
No, like I said, if nothing's going to change between now and May 1st or May 2nd.
No.
If you were going to do it, if you wanted to do it, why would you not do it now? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I look at it and say that they already have a plan. They're just waiting for it, and they're going to let time our pass, and then we're going to talk to them before the draft, and they're going to, give us the same excuse, oh, they have until May 2nd, and then they're not going to pick it up. And then we're going to be talking to them at OTAs, and we'll see what happens.
Probably get something good from Najee about that if they don't pick up his option.
Oh, 100% would definitely get something good from Najee. I would be very excited about what Najee has to say after not picking up a fifth year. You think he'd hold in? Do you think he'd be the next Steeler to hold in?
I don't know. That doesn't seem like – maybe it does seem like a Najee move. But, I feel like Najee is the type of guy who would be like, okay, I'm just going to go play and I'm going to go dominate, and I'm going to show you guys why you were dumb to not pick up my fifth-year option.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
But he could also say, oh, cool, I'm going to make this much more expensive for you guys to keep me around then.
Yes. I could see that too. They're just like, he's just like, nah, you know what? Everybody else does it, I'm going to do it too. And at that point, I mean, you're playing a dangerous game if you're Najee Harris and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because you're fighting a battle that I don't think could be won. And you're just going to say, hey, we got you for one more rookie year. You got to play. It is what it is. And then they'll take it. If they're not picking up his fifth-year option, they're not franchise tagging him, because that's going to be like $10+ million. I think it's a very strange situation that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to put themselves in, it seems, because they're going to avoid that fifth-year option. All right, next player I want to talk about, DeMarvin Leal, Pittsburgh Steelers defensive tackle, kind of, I want to say, took a step backwards last season. Now you don't really know what the role is for this guy, if he's going to be somebody that they try to escalate again, if at this point Dean Lowry's their replacement, and you're just looking at it and saying DeMarvin Leal doesn't fit in this defense. Where does he go from here? Where do the Steelers go from here? Brian Backo, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, said, quote, occasionally players who can have some value to other teams in trade talks are ones that have decent draft pedigree and physical attributes, measurables, and just haven't panned out in the NFL. I look at the Steelers' D-line, kind of go down the list. DeMarvin Leal, third rounder a couple of years ago, just has not panned out here the last 2 seasons. A little bit injury-induced, but I think more so just hasn't developed the way that they want. He goes on to talk about how he believes he could be a trade target and how teams could view this as, hey, look at, he doesn't fit in Pittsburgh's defense. Maybe he'll fit in ours. Third-year guy, has the ability to play inside and outside. I think that he fits better in a 4-3 defense than he does a 3-4 defense, which has been his issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Played 25% of the snaps last year. Was benched a couple of times, made a healthy inactive because he just didn't fit the scheme of what the Steelers were looking for. I don't know. You think this is the next trade piece for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Omar Khan's dicing and sending guys left and right. So at this point, I think anything's on the table.
Yeah, I do think anything's on the table. I mean, I wonder with the current state of the defensive line, I still don't think it's terribly deep, and I don't think trading away another defensive lineman obviously makes you that deep. But then again, what was DeMarvin Leal doing for you?
Yep.
Not a whole lot. Like you said, only playing 25% of the snaps, and I think that was largely out of necessity given some of the injuries that they had. I don't know. At first, my first instinct was to say, no, I don't think it's worth it to trade him. I don't think you can really get enough to make it worth it. But I don't know. He's not doing anything for you right now. And it might just be better for everyone to move on, for him to get a fresh start, to find somewhere where he might actually fit better. You can open up a roster spot to, give a rookie a shot if you want to draft someone. The more I think about it, the more I think a trade could be possible. I would still be kind of surprised, but because I have no idea what you're getting for DeMarvin Leal. I can't imagine it's that high a value. I mean, I don't know what you think, but the idea that they would get, and maybe a sixth round pick is worth it, to move on from a guy who's really just hasn't been able to work out in your system. But man, I don't think you're getting much for DeMarvin Leal. You're not getting much more than that, if anything, in my opinion.
I think that you could get higher. I think you get a fourth. I think potentially a fourth and something for DeMarvin Leal. I think that he's got the potential, and he's young enough that people are going to look at it and say, another team's going to be like, look, we need a depth piece. This is a good depth piece. I think that he's got, coming into the league, people were kind of shocked that he was a third-round pick. They looked at him and just said, this guy, he threw a draft party for himself on night one of the draft because there was consideration that he was going to be a first-round draft pick. It was kind of, he slid to the Steelers in a good situation. And I think teams are going to look at that and say he's young enough where maybe we could develop him into something. You still got 2 years of a really cheap contract. If the Steelers draft a defensive lineman, I think it's very, I think that it's almost guaranteed that DeMarvin Leal is on his way out in some way or another. Just because Isaiah Loudermilk, whether you keep him after this season or not, is still cheap. Dean Lowry is going to be like your primary backup. You re-sign Montravius Adams, so you don't have to worry about a nose tackle. You have Nick Herbig. I mean, you're probably going to add another outside linebacker at some point, but Nick Herbig's your number 3, and I think the Steelers feel very comfortable with their 1, 2, 3. DeMarvin Leal just doesn't fit anywhere. Like, he doesn't have a spot in this defense, and I think the Steelers wanted him to have a spot, but I don't think that his body type works for what the Steelers are looking to do. Like, he's more of a Chase Young, Myles Garrett. He's not on that level, but he plays that position more than he plays a Larry Ogunjobi or TJ Watt. It just doesn't work. You know, he's too slow to play on the outside. He's too small to play on the inside. I think that another team in the right situation with the right scheme, I think that they could view him and say, oh, you know, like this dude could come off the bench and probably contribute to us. And they're not going to see, you know, I mean, DeMarvin Leal showed up a little bit out of shape last year, and there were all those reports about how like the Steelers were a little bit upset because he just wasn't putting in the effort that they wanted him to see. Other teams aren't going to know that. You know, they're going to have some intel, but they're not going to know how much of that is true and how much of that is not true. I think the Steelers could get maybe a 4th rounder for him in the right situation. You know, I think Omar Khan could wheel and deal him somewhere. I don't like if you're getting a 6th rounder for DeMarvin Leal, I don't think it's worth it because I think his potential's there. I think if you could get a 4th rounder, I'm at least considering that move because I don't think he's a long-term option here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Like, you worried about depth, but, like, what position does he fill depth for? Like, you don't know. Like, I don't think he really knows either. I don't think the Steelers really know either as well. So, I get that. I would be really stunned if I'm an NFL GM, I'm not sure I'm trading a 4th-round pick for DeMarvin Leal. Like, I don't know. Where's the line for you? Like, would a 5th be worth it, or is it anything less than a 4th and you're not interested?
I think a 5th and some, maybe I'm considering that as an option. You know, I think I think the NFL draft will decide that for, you know, what side of the fence I'm on there. Just because if you add somebody in the draft that you feel is immediately ready to be a depth piece, why you don't need DeMarvin Leal? Who cares about DeMarvin Leal? If you don't and you need somebody this year, I think it makes sense to maybe hold off a year and then try to trade him next year. I don't know. I think the draft will decide what side of the fence I'm on there. Right now, if it happened today, I'm going 4th or lower. I'm not going a 5th. I'm not feeling good enough about where the rest of the line is to go with a 5th.
And you would the trade would come after draft day, or do you think it's possible at all that it comes before?
I think it's possible it comes before, but if I had to guess, I'd say that it's like a Kevin Dotson, Kendrick Green situation where they bring him into training camp, they try to figure something out. It doesn't work out. Teams are starting to realize they need depth pieces because there will be teams out there, you know, like it was the Kendrick Green, it was the like teams are going to start to see like, oh man, dude, we really need a defensive end. Like we do not have defensive ends. We need a defensive end. That's when his trade value, I think, will be the most. I think before the draft, his trade value is low, like real low, like 6th round low, because the draft is somewhat deep at defensive line, and they're not like starter. This is a superstar deep, but it's like quality depth deep. I think teams are going to view that as a better option because you get somebody who's cheap for 4 years instead of 2, and you don't have to give anything up. Whereas after the draft, once these guys don't work out, and you know you're starting to see like, oh man, the 6th round pick that we were really hoping was that guy isn't that guy yet. Or this person got hurt or that person got hurt, I think that's when his draft stock will increase. And it'll also give the Steelers his trade stock will increase. And it'll also give the Steelers time to evaluate him and say, hey, look, this guy did take a step forward. Awesome. Or this guy did not take a step forward and it's ready. Like we're ready to move on. You know, it gives everybody some tape. I would say training camp, and I would say deep into training camp, like August. Right before
like when When did that Dotson trade happen? And the Kendrick Green one was early, right? But the Dotson one was kind of late, like because the Rams had already got some guys banged up. That's why they needed Dotson.
Yeah, they both happened right after each other, but I think it was, I don't think they played a preseason game yet. Maybe they did play a preseason game. But it was definitely more towards the preseason than it was the beginning of training camp, because they already went through the whole Kendrick Green fullback phase and all this nonsense.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Yeah. So they already went through all that. So I would imagine it's kind of the same spot. Like they're going to give DeMarvin some time and they're going to work him on the 90-man roster, and then right before the preseason or after the preseason first game, boom, he's out the door. He's on his way somewhere else. And I think Omar Khan could wheel him and deal him for something. But I would imagine, like, if I had to put a percentage on it right now, I'd say there's probably an 80% chance the Steelers deal DeMarvin Leal before the beginning of the season. That would be my guess. So we'll see what happens. All right, next thing I want to talk about, the Pittsburgh Steelers still need a slot corner. Mike Tomlin confirmed at the meetings. I mean, I asked him about center. He started talking about slot corner. We've already talked about that. Where do you go get one? We talked about MJ Devonshire the other day. I thought that was a great conversation. There's a name out there that I think makes a lot of sense for the Steelers, that if he could stay healthy, why would you not go and get him? I think he's an option for them. And to be quite honest, I think that as more time passes, he wasn't a name that had any reported interest, but he's a name that makes so much sense that I think the Steelers have him on their radar. That's former Pitt star Avonte Maddox. I mean, there's really no big names left at corner. We've already talked about how Patrick Peterson doesn't make sense. You could draft a guy, and I think they will look to draft a guy, but you want a proven commodity right now because that solidifies your cornerback room. You need that spot. If you fill your slot corner, you don't need any other starters on this defense, which is exactly what the Steelers are looking to do before the NFL draft. I don't know. Avonte Maddox, does he make sense? He's only got 4 interceptions his entire career, and he hasn't played a full season in 3 years. But you know, if he could stay healthy, which he's struggled to do throughout his time in the NFL, he does make an impact. Do you view him as an option, you know, coming from Philly? And do you think the Steelers should have interest in him?
I think he's an option knowing that you're going to add depth later, like in the draft. You're going to add someone who's young who could potentially fill some time. Like, I think it would work out pretty well if Maddox is like your week 1 starter. And this is weird to say, like it won't work well if Maddox gets hurt. Like that's not ideal, but like assuming Maddox does get hurt, you've got a guy who's been behind him for a couple of weeks, been able to learn from him, has a mentor in that room that you've just drafted who has some potential ideally.
Yep.
So I think like Maddox only works if he's not your last addition. And I think that's kind of the key piece there, because he can't be your only option at slot corner. He can't be the only guy that you've got in there that's just too unreliable. It would throw things too out of whack if he's your only guy in there. Given the injury history, it would make me really uneasy, but you draft a guy to come in and be his backup and learn a little bit. He can be a later round guy that's developmental and, you know, kind of fits in the same mold as Maddox, you know, a low draft pick, but a smaller guy that needed some work, but you know, a guy who could follow the same career path, could take some advice. I think that's the ideal situation for the Steelers and everybody else. I like Maddox. He'll definitely be cheap.
Yes.
And I think you're spot on that when he does play, he does make an impact. You just need a backup plan, obviously, for a guy who has that kind of injury history.
Yeah, 100%. Just to run through some injuries here, okay? We'll go 2022. This list I'm looking at starts in 2022. Toe injury for 3 weeks, hamstring injury. These are all 2022. Ankle, knee, ankle, knee, concussion, ankle, knee. That just goes, I mean, halfway through. That goes to week 12 of 2018. That's how many injuries this guy's dealt with in that short of a span. He is injury prone, so you're spot on. Like you got to have somebody who's going to be able to step in, and you're not going to take a significant step backwards. That guy could be an MJ Devonshire. That could be a late round pick that you feel is comfortable enough. It could be a Darius Rush that you hope is a guy that takes a step forward. But you have to feel confident enough in this guy to know that there's a chance, a pretty good chance, he's going to start throughout the season. I don't think that holds you back from Maddox. But I think you could get Maddox for like a $1 million deal. You know,
right.
one year, prove it, you got to come in here. You're 28 years old. You still got lots of football left, but you've never been healthy. Can you play a full season, in the NFL and stay healthy? If he could do that, then he'll get a bigger deal elsewhere. I still don't think it'd be in Pittsburgh. But for this season, a 1-year prove-it deal, as long as you could have somebody else, I agree with you, makes a lot of sense. I don't know, how low do you go in the draft to make that backup? Does it have to be somebody that's, does it have to be a Max Melton who's like a 3rd, 4th round pick that could come in here and start if you need to, or can it be a developmental piece and you could feel comfortable enough with that?
Yeah, I mean, as it does with every conversation we have about the draft, it depends on how the board falls, but I would be more inclined to go for a Melton, a guy who has starter potential right away. Because I think you need another corner anyway. It's not Melton would be a slot corner option now, but he could be, an outside option in the future, if Dante Jackson doesn't work out, if that's not a long-term option. I think you still need a guy like that. And I think aiming a little bit higher than you otherwise might isn't the worst thing in the world. Just to kind of cover all of your bases. I mean, I don't know how many guys there are that could make that transition pretty smoothly from outside to slot and then back to outside if need be. But that is the kind of guy I would aim for. I would overshoot on a corner than you otherwise might, just because I think there would be some long-term needs there too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good spot to start, unless they're going to get some look. They have some knowledge of how they feel about Darius Rush. If that's, if they feel confident enough in him, then I think you could lower that draft pick and say, hey, look, we could go 6th round, we could go 7th round for a corner and feel okay about that. How they feel about Corey Trice, but both of those guys are giant question marks. And I don't know how confident the Steelers feel in them, just because they either didn't get to watch them at all, or they had limited experience watching them in 2023. So, I think those two play a factor, but I agree with you. If you are not sold on either of them yet, then you have to have somebody that's reliable right now, and that could play a role moving forward, because that's how, if you sign Avonte Maddox to a 1-year deal, your slot and your outside guy are both gone after the season, and you could extend them both, but are you willing to pay that money for guys? It does. It opens up questions. And the Steelers, while they are approaching this season as we have to win the Super Bowl now, they don't want to approach it as this is it. We win the Super Bowl and then it's back to ground zero and we're going to suck for a couple of years. They want Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, and you're going to need pieces there long-term, cheap pieces. So I agree. And I think corner has kind of slipped down the Steelers draft boards quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So to get that guy maybe in the 3rd round makes some sense for the Steelers if it is a guy with starter potential. I mean, Kalen King's an option, but I don't think they have much interest in him. Max Melton's a guy that I've heard that they have a lot of interest in. I just don't know where he's going to go actually come draft day. But Maddox, an option, certainly. And if those second-year guys work out, I think that's a conversation that we'll have about how, hey, maybe the Steelers' cornerback room is a little bit deeper than we expected, which leaves them with even more options moving forward. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all our work at allsteelers.com and InsideThePanthers.com. Remember to jump onto the live stream later today, 4 p.m. Other channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips. We're going to answer some questions, go through some stuff for about 20, 25 minutes, then do the giveaway just at the half-hour mark, and give away a Mean Joe Green jersey on top of a couple other T-shirts and things like that. So make sure that you guys are there and subscribed. We will be back. I'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.